Welcome back to another industry report. So, corporate greed, it's a pretty well documented thing in the games industry. That image, of a shadowy CEO raking in the cash, where the lower level employees are working, impossible hours, they're stuck with crunch, all those things. It's an undeniably attractive image, right? A clear villain to act as an emotional touch point for many people's frustrations. Well, if there's any CEO that fits in people's minds, I think it is Bobby Kotick. He's such a meme at this stage. And yeah, he routinely is raking in tens of millions of dollars in stock options on top of his meaty annual salary. A particularly glaring example, I suppose, especially given the 800 employees cut and all of that stuff. And he's actually an example that now company shareholders are increasingly unhappy about, according to recent reports. Yes, some think that enough is enough, and today we are going to explore that. Of course, first though, press those YouTube buttons. It truly does help the channel. And if you like the idea of daily news content and physical loot in your mailbox to go with it, then check out the Patreon link down in the description. With that said, let's get into the video. Okay, let's talk about Bobby's beans and the investor who is not particularly happy about them. Bobby was paid about $30.1 million in 2019. Now, around $1.8 million of that is the base salary, while the rest is made up of his bonus, stock, and stock options, though he did actually make another 90 grand in other compensation. Now, this overall package, believe it or not, was actually down on the previous year, in which he made $30.8 million. Yeah, so Bobby's down about 700k. I don't know, will he be able to make by? He might have to make some budget cuts, pretty rough. Now, the reason for this discrepancy is that 2019 was a, quote, year of transition and investment for Activision, in which its executive officers weren't able to receive their target bonus. Kotick, though, did manage to secure 82% of his regardless. Overall, though, this means that Bobby Kotick is one of the highest paid executives, not only in gaming, but actually across the entire entertainment media industry. He has received over $20 million a year for the past 4 years in stock options alone, on top of his base salary. Now, to do some napkin math there, $20 million of Activision Blizzard stock, that's 285,000 shares. Now, their latest dividend paid 41 cents per, so that is about 117k in dividends, which Activision Blizzard pay out yearly. Of course, though, he'll have a massive amount of stock, right, from his very long tenure there. And this does mean that Bobby will be getting chunky dividend payments, but of course the main gains there will still be based on the value of his portfolio increasing. Now, of course, being a CEO and trading your own stock is risky business. Insider trading regulations are strong for very good reasons. So yeah, right, a large stock portfolio, dividends that he's going to receive. Now, of course, you can't get super technical about the relationship between dividends and the stock's value, but you know what, let's not bother. Your TLDR here is that old Bobby is doing pretty darn well for himself. Now, to the recent story. Well, the issue here that shareholders are taking is that his bonus eclipses the total pay for many CEOs across the industry. The CTW Investment Group are imploring stakeholders to vote against a measure that increases Kotick's rate further. They are calling for a vote against the Say on Pay proposal, which is scheduled for Activision's annual meeting on June 11th. CTW's complaints are numerous, but to put them quite simply, right, Bobby has multiple overlapping opportunities to earn extra from his core duties, that Activision also don't lay out his performance targets clearly enough, and that the group are worried about what they say are deep operational problems from the apparent job insecurity, while Bobby is continually rewarded. And of course, they draw attention to Bobby getting $30 million in compensation after they laid off 800 staff. Now, what is absolutely essential, right, that I don't really think has been covered in a lot of other places, what you need to know about this, right, so you understand it, is to understand CTW Investment Group, because they're not your average investor. They are an ethical investor. That's, broadly speaking, a sort of category of investor, like an ethical investor, an activist investor, but they basically work with pension funds that are backed by unions that are part of a federation called Change to Win. Now, their stated goal is to maximize long-term shareholder returns via active ownership, and then if you actually dig into it, they've got a lot of stuff about critiques of Wall Street and just, responsible management of companies. Now, what does this mean? Well, they're an active investor. They're using that worker money in the form of those pension funds and similar things to get clout and to advocate for longer-term change that's in a more ethical direction, a more corporately responsible one. And I suppose the idea there is that the more corporate responsibility and, reasonable things going on, I guess anti-2008 things, then the more long-term positive results that will be actualized. So that's basically their shtick. That's what they're saying. And, activist investing, it's a very interesting field. You've got everything from examples ranging from, there's a group of activist investor nuns who are going, I think it's against guns, and is it guns and alcohol? Something like that. But anyway, a bunch of nuns who've decided, we're actually going to use these corporate structures and things to actually organize so that we can advocate for the change that we want. Another one, a larger example, is Norway's Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is also, from time to time, a pretty activisty investor in terms of the sorts of things it'll be advocating for, just from boards and stuff like that. So that's basically where this is coming from. So it's not really your average investor who is purely there just to get, just for the stock, okay, just to see it go up. There's kind of a different angle from these guys. Now, while the layoffs were undeniably poor PR and an absolute nightmare for all the staff involved, they were part of a new strategic direction, one that involved cutting a bunch of fat and sort of realigning the business. And it is a bit weird because I do know that, even from having worked with Blizzard, they were really, there was just a lot of bad organization, overlapping job roles and things like that. But, the thing then is, well, that's kind of Bobby and Co.'s fault for actually making it that way, which really did suck. And you know what? A lot of those staff, they could have just reorganized in a way that did not involve booting everybody out, because in so many teams, I know in the World of Warcraft team, they booted a guy out, and then what happened? Pretty soon after, they reposted his same job, but I think with lower pay and an associate role and with more responsibilities. And that's something they did very rapidly for one of the Hearthstone CMs as well. So it really is a pretty horrible situation there. Now, the timing of Kotick's bonus, could have been better, obviously, right? Timed with the 800 people. And, it could have been more clear that that was maybe an apparent reward for good performance that came from that decision, right? That yielding positive results, rather than just sort of simply as it happened, which was a particularly bad look. Now, ActiBliz obviously defended their pay strategy. Their statement says that Kotick's tenure is the longest of any public tech CEO, and that Activision Blizzard's market cap has increased from under $10 million to over $53 billion with his leadership. It also states that the share prices have performed consistently well over the past 5 years. Kotick, it argues, has delivered exceptional value for stockholders. And that's all fair, espousing his value, but it doesn't really address the concerns of CTW Investment Group, right? And really that's part of the point here, right? Activision Blizzard, they are a bit more cold and efficient. A lot of investors are as well, while CTW is more of an activist investor, which is why you'll see them be the types of people who'll be bringing up things like this at these meetings. In any case, it's unlikely, I think, that launching an attack on the CEO's bonus is going to affect any significant change unless the moral and sort of corporate responsibility issues that CTW Investment Group raised actually have an impact on Activision Blizzard's returns. And, is that even going to be something that is clear or unclear? It's kind of hard to know. Now, how could that stuff happen? Well, you've got things like unclear performance targets that they mentioned, and lots of opportunity for Bobby to harvest up compensation. Well, that could set a poor standard, could be bad for employee morale. Maybe it's not the way you want your company to be ran. Again, think of, say, Iwata, right, and how he did things. They cited the 800 lost employees, and that taking a large compensation package, at that time, right, that, I think anyone would say is terrible leadership. As I just mentioned, compare it to Iwata, right? Whenever Nintendo was going through hard times, their leadership took way higher pay cuts than what Bobby, will have taken here, which was, 30.8, 30.1 million. Now, for CTW, they also may think that the change with the 800 staff and just generally how the business is ran prioritizes short-term cost-cutting and efficiency over the long-term fundamentals of the business. And that is a very interesting topic, and there's a lot of things to consider. Personally, I would say this. If you're an investor, I think it would actually be sensible to be bullish on Activision over the next 5 years. I do think you get pretty good returns, but I do worry about Activision in the longer term timescales, because I think we're in a situation where Overwatch is iffy, right? Their esports stuff seems like it's a bit pumped up and not really that organic. So what's Blizzard really got, right? I mean, they've got World of Warcraft as a massive thing. D4, is that really going to be a massive long-term revenue source? I'm not particularly convinced right now. So on the Blizzard side, it's very WoW focused. And then for Activision, I mean, they are Call of Duty. They do other things as well, but Call of Duty really is their main thing. So Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4, I think they'll do well enough. Call of Duty, it'll truck on, but what about after that? Activision Blizzard are not as well diversified as many other publishers, and while that strategy is working now, I would worry about the longer term risk that's involved here, especially since they historically have been slow to adapt new trends. And if you go to some of the recent content that we've made, it's 128 games over the next 5 years that Take-Two, or no, is it 90 something? It's some number like that. And then Embracer Group is even more games currently in development. So I'd imagine that Activision's number is actually quite a bit smaller than theirs are. So I think that there's worries here about Activision being a bit short-sighted and not being particularly creative, not really being industry leaders, right, pushing us forward. So that's a long-term worry, but right now, if Bobby is further incentivized to enable the high stock prices and all the stockholders benefit, then, I mean, it's working, right? I mean, despite all the bad PR, Activision Blizzard right now are on the warpath. They obviously have some issues, as the operational issues that CTW raised. I mean, especially if you look at, say, Blizzard's content output as well. But everything seems to be gearing up pretty well on the Activision side. Call of Duty and a wave of remasters seems to be working well for them. And looking at the stock price, they are only a few percentage points away from their before BlizzCon 2018 high. And of course, the thing that really tanked them was losing Destiny 2. So they're now at a stage where I would really say the strength of the Call of Duty brand through its expansion into Warzone and mobile has now actually raised their stock value. And remember, stocks, what are they really, right? They're just an expectation of future returns. So that stock price is like what it was when they had an entire new, separate game, a pretty major one in their business with Destiny 2. So that just really shows you that by going deep into a small number of franchises, they have been able to claw that back and actually do pretty well. Of course, though, as I said, the question is, will that last long into the future? Of course, though, with these results, I think shareholders, a lot of them, are just going to be keeping quiet, reaping the rewards, and not really caring that much, while you do have some of the activist investors, like CTW, who are maybe going to be trying to affect change. I would maybe say that it could be that CTW would be seeing problems because they're looking for problems. They'd see them a little bit earlier, and maybe just a few years before those problems really start to actually cause issues for the other investors. And if those problems do cause those issues, then yeah, you could maybe see some more fundamental change there going on at the higher levels of Activision Blizzard. But for right now, I really don't think so. I think it's going to be increasing stock price, Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, D4, Overwatch 2, and after that, I mean, hey, who the hell knows? Kind of hard to say. They haven't really invested that much or as much as a bunch of other companies in their sort of diversification as a business. So there you go. That is the recent story of Bobby Kotick and the pushback against his compensation, as well as just some analysis of Activision Blizzard as a business. I hope you enjoyed it. Of course, be sure to check out the videos we posted on the channel yesterday. If you're interested in corporate BS, that Take-Two video, I think you'll really enjoy it. And of course, hit that sub button because we will have a video up tomorrow. So with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.